Hello and welcome to this lecture, which is called the Qualitative Research Process. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about the process for qualitative research with the understanding that each qualitative research project is different and that the process is iterative. In other words, you might keep going along the circle of the process that I will show you in the next slide and then go backwards and then redo and go forwards. That is an evolving process, but it is important to understand all the steps of this process because as you create a proposal for research work, you will need to consider all of these things. So think of this as kind of a checklist of all the pieces that you need to have in place before you can do a research project. So here is the research process represented in kind of a circle. You begin with inquiry. Those are your research questions or the phenomenon that you want to study, then articulated as very specific research questions in the second step. Then, based on your research questions, you will create a study design. So the choices that you make about design are influenced by your research question. Based on this design, you will create instruments, decide on a recruiting and sampling process, actually do your data collection, figure out procedures and processes for data handling, and data analysis. And finally, you will write and report about your research. And then this will lead you to new areas of inquiry and the process begins again. Let's start from the beginning. You want to decide on a phenomenon or area of inquiry. This is going to be the kernel of the beginning of your research project. What is it that you are interested in? What is interesting about it? And why is it important to study this? We want to make sure that our research studies are working towards deep understandings that help people. Because, at least in my opinion, research is about improving knowledge, and making lives better for people based on that knowledge. We don't make knowledge just for the sake of it, but rather to make positive changes in the lives of real people. After you've figured out what you're going to research, you need to articulate specific research questions. So think about what areas of the phenomenon or the area of inquiry are you particularly interested in studying? And it's very difficult to come out with a research question exactly perfect the first time. It's something that takes revisions and that they will get revised, particularly in qualitative research, throughout the process of doing the investigation. Based on your research questions, you're going to create a study design. You're going to look to the literature. What has been studied before and what is known about the area of inquiry that you've chosen. You're going to have to come up with a framework. Consider ethical concerns. The time span that you have to complete your study, that really affects the design of your study. You want to make sure that if you're doing the study, that you have enough time to complete it. Think about the amount of data needed, the type of study or methodology, and your positionality as a researcher. All of these things influence the study design that you will create. After you've come up with your study design, you'll create instruments or protocols. For example, an interview protocol, observation protocol, surveys, or other types of instruments that you will use to actually collect your data. Next, you'll consider recruiting and sampling, which means finding and selecting participants. As we discussed in a previous lecture, there's different types of sampling, snowball, purposeful, there's many different ones, and you're going to select the one that makes sense for your research questions. Then it's time to actually collect the data. You're going to have the proper materials, protocols, consent forms, equipment. You want to make sure that you select the correct equipment for your purpose. Are you going to do audio recording? Do you need a video camera? What kind of equipment can you use? Can it be as simple as your phone? Or will you need to buy special equipment like a particular type of voice recorder or video camera? These are all considerations you need to think of when doing your data collection. Next, data handling. Once you have the data, how are you going to handle it? You'll need to do transcriptions, and you'll need to come up with your method for doing transcriptions, whether that is that you're going to outsource them to a transcription company, if you're going to do complete transcriptions of everything recorded, or rather only transcribe a subset of your recordings. Cleaning your data, quality control. So in other words, if you're using recorded data and the recording is poor, what is going to be your process for eliminating or keeping that data in your study? Data storage and maintaining confidentiality, depending on your plan. Next, data analysis. You need to go back to the theoretical framework that you've decided to employ for your study and connect your data analysis to your framework. Often in qualitative research, data analysis involves creating a code book or a list of codes with their definitions. And you might choose to use retrieval and categorizing software such as Atlas TI, HyperResearch, or NVivo. The old-fashioned way to do the kinds of coding that retrieval and categorizing software lets you do is to just use highlighting, cutting and pasting. You can use Excel, you can use Word. People used to use index cards. So there's different ways that you can mechanize or systematize the coding, but you'll need to come up and make a decision about what that way is and be able to describe it in your write-up, which is the last part. In writing and reporting, you'll need to decide where you want to publish your work, whether you would like to present on it in addition to publishing, and making sure that the audience for your work hears the message that you are putting out there. And so that the people who most need to understand the contribution of your research, you need to make sure you place your writing in journals that are being read by the people that you want to influence. So that is an overview of the qualitative research process. But remember, all qualitative research projects are a little different, and you will need to adapt yours to your own way, to your own particular study.